I always believed that betrayal had a particular sound, something sharp, something violent. A slammed door, a shouted word, a breaking plate. I never expected it to come in the form of my son's gentle voice saying, "Mom, let me help you downstairs. I think something's wrong with the breaker." Daniel had always spoken softly, even as a child. When he was little, his voice barely rose above a whisper whenever he felt unsure, and I always praised him for that gentleness. I used to say he got it from me, though my husband insisted it came from the quiet evenings at the lake when I would hum lullabies into Daniel's hair as he fell asleep against my chest. Yes, that same child, my child, would be the one to lock me in the basement like a stranger. When he mentioned the breaker box, I didn't think twice. We had been having flickering lights for 2 days, and he offered to check it for our safety. He had always been handy. That's what I thought, what I let myself believe. A mother's trust is sometimes too soft, too blind. I followed him past the kitchen and down the creaking wooden steps into the basement. My husband, Richard, came behind us, his footsteps heavier, slower. He'd been complaining of a stiff knee all morning, and I made a mental note to remind him to take his evening pain pill when we came back upstairs. I remember thinking that, of all things, something so incredibly ordinary in a moment that was anything but. The basement smelled like old paint and memories. Boxes we never opened anymore. Jars of peaches I canned years ago. Dusty tools on shelves my husband had organized with military precision. The air was cool, almost cold, brushing against my skin like a warning I didn't yet understand. Daniel stepped aside, gesturing politely. "You two wait right here," he said. "I'll check the wiring." I nodded. He walked toward the breaker box, and then stopped. That pause should have told me everything, but my heart didn't want to hear it. A mother's love can be so foolishly loyal. I heard the door above us click. Not the sound of it closing accidentally. Not a slip of the hand. No, a deliberate, heavy slam. And then, the metallic slice of a lock turning. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped. "Daniel!" My voice cracked. "What are you doing?" No answer. My husband reached the door and banged on it firmly. "Son, open this door right now. This isn't funny." Still nothing. I pressed my palms against the wood. "Daniel!" I shouted. "Talk to me." His voice finally drifted through. "Calm. Too calm. Just stay down there for a while. It's for the best." For the best? My heart lurched as fear rushed through me like icy water. "What are you talking about?" I cried. "You'll understand tomorrow," he answered. "Once the papers are signed." Papers? What papers? My mind was spinning so fast I couldn't even find a rational thought to cling to. "Daniel, open this door," I begged, my voice shaking. "Please." But his footsteps retreated, unhurried, uncaring. Each fading step was a punch to my chest, a crack forming where love had once held firm. I stood frozen, staring at the door as if it would open just because I needed it to. My hands trembled so badly I had to clench them to stop the shaking. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet, not while I still didn't understand. Behind me, Richard touched my shoulder with surprising calm. "Quiet," he whispered near my ear. "They don't know what's behind this wall." His voice wasn't afraid. It wasn't angry. It was something I'd never heard from him before, cold confidence. My panic slowly gave way to confusion. "What wall?" I whispered back. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. He simply looked past me toward a far corner of the basement, a place he had always kept just slightly out of my reach. And in that moment, before I knew the secret, before the truth unraveled, I felt something shift. The betrayal had already begun, but so had the awakening. My heart was still hammering from the shock, but my husband's strange calm pulled me out of the swirl of panic, almost like his voice anchored me to the floor beneath my shaking feet. "Richard," I whispered again. "What wall?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly across the basement, his steps deliberate, like someone returning to a place he hoped he'd never need to revisit. I followed him with my eyes, confusion tightening in my chest. The far left corner of the basement. The one place he always hovered over. The one area he dusted himself even when I insisted I could help. He'd always say, "Leave that part to me, sweetheart," in such a gentle tone that I never questioned it. I told myself it was just his old habit of keeping the workshop tidy. I never imagined it was something more. Richard knelt beside the wall, grunting softly as his knee protested. The exposed bulb above us flickered again, casting long shadows across his face. His expression was focused, determined, so unlike the quiet, soft-spoken man I married. My fear twisted into something sharper. He pressed his thumb against a small, discolored brick. It looked no different than the others, just a bit grayer, maybe a little more worn. But when his thumb pushed, the brick moved inward with unsettling ease. My breath hitched. I never wanted to use this again, he murmured, mostly to himself. I prayed we'd never need to. Use what? My voice cracked with impatience, uncertainty, and the remnants of motherly grief over what Daniel had just done. He pried the brick loose with the tips of his fingers. It scraped softly and then came free, revealing a hollow space behind it, just large enough for a hidden compartment. I stepped closer, almost afraid to breathe. Inside the small cavity was a metal box wrapped in oilcloth, a folded map, a set of old brass keys with worn edges, and a paper envelope so aged its edges had curled. It looked like something out of a movie or a crime novel, something that had no business existing in my quiet life of canning fruit, knitting blankets, and raising a son who clearly no longer saw me as more than an obstacle. My voice trembled. Richard, what have you kept from me? He stayed silent for a moment, his shoulders heavy with years of unspoken weight. Then he lifted the metal box and placed it gently on the floor between us. His hands, usually steady, shook just slightly. 39 years, he said quietly. That's how long this has been here. My mind raced. 39 years. That would have been shortly after we bought this house. Shortly after we were newly married, when Daniel was still small enough to sleep on my chest, when our only worries were unpaid bills and whether the rain would ruin the laundry hanging on the line. You hid something before we'd even been here a year? I whispered. He nodded slowly with shame and resolve tangled in his eyes. I didn't want to burden you. There were things happening then. What things? I pressed. He took a long breath, the kind that carried memories he'd buried so deep they had roots. My brother, he said finally. You remember how we had that falling out? How he stopped coming around? Of course, I said. You said it was over a business disagreement. It was more than that. He looked at me with sorrow. He tried to take everything from us. Everything. The business, the land, our savings. I knew if I fought him openly, he'd drag us down with him. So I moved everything, every asset, every deed into protected accounts. Completely inaccessible to anyone except us. So this? I gestured to the hidden items. This is what you hid. Yes. I kept it quiet because I didn't want you carrying that fear. He paused. And because secrets once spoken have power. My eyes stung, not from fear this time, but from the magnitude of what he had carried alone. And Daniel, I whispered, dread creeping back in. Richard exhaled slowly. He must have found out the house is worth a fortune. And he must think wrongly that we have no protections in place. They probably plan to declare us incompetent, force a sale, and take everything. I felt something inside me crack, cleanly, sharply. Not a break born from weakness but from awakening. He locked us down here, I said softly. He thought we were helpless. Richard looked into my eyes, an ember of strength burning behind his calm. But he doesn't know, he said gently, what's behind this wall. And suddenly neither my age nor my fear mattered. We had a secret. We had a weapon. We had a way out. And for the first time since the basement door slammed shut, I felt a spark of power returning to my chest. For a long moment, Richard and I simply stared at the items laid out between us on the cold basement floor. The metal box, the yellowed envelope, the folded map. It all felt surreal, like pieces of a life I didn't know we'd lived. My fingers trembled as I reached out and touched the edge of the map, brushing decades of dust from it. Show me, I whispered. I wasn't sure which truth I was asking for. The one about his brother, the one about the accounts, or the one about how our son had come to betray us so deeply. Richard unfolded the map with careful, almost reverent hands. The paper crackled softly. On it, drawn in fading ink, was a rough outline of our property as it had been nearly 40 years ago. The creek was still there, though in those days it curved closer to the house. The old coal chute, long sealed, long forgotten, was marked with a small X that made my heartbeat tick faster. "This tunnel," he said, pointing to a slender line sketched behind the house foundation, "runs under the north edge of the basement. My grandfather dug it during the coal shortage years. I sealed the outside entrance in '85, but not completely. It's still passable." "Passable?" I echoed weakly. "Richard, we're in our 70s. His eyes softened. "You're stronger than you think." It wasn't reassurance. It was truth. Even after everything, my fear, my heartbreak, the heaviness in my bones, I believed him. He set the map aside and unlocked the metal box with one of the old brass keys. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt like history exhaling. Inside were documents neatly arranged in folders: deed records, bank account statements, notarized letters, and legal documents bearing our names. "This is everything we own," he said quietly. "Protected so no one, not my brother, not creditors, and certainly not Daniel, can take it from us without our consent." Hearing my son's name was like swallowing glass. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my shaking body still. How could he do this to us? My voice broke. We raised him with love. We helped him through every failure. We welcomed his wife even when she treated us like burdens. Richard's jaw tightened, a flicker of something hard and painful crossing his features. "I started noticing things months ago," he admitted. "Little things. Strange calls he took outside. The way he asked about the title to the house. The way she talked to him like our lives were inconveniences." "You didn't tell me," I said softly. "Because I wasn't sure," he answered. "And because I didn't want to worry you until I had proof." I sank down onto an old crate, the weight of everything pressing on my shoulders. "He locked us in the basement, Richard. Our son. Our own flesh and blood." My husband knelt in front of me, taking my hands gently into his. "This isn't your fault," he said. "Love doesn't guarantee loyalty. And loyalty doesn't guarantee love. Sometimes children choose their own shadows." Tears welled in my eyes, not just tears of hurt, but of grief for the boy I had raised. The child who used to run through the halls with mismatched socks. The young man who asked me to iron his shirt for his first job interview. How had that boy become this man capable of locking his elderly parents away like obstacles to be removed? "Why papers?" I asked. What did he mean? Richard's expression hardened. "He wants us to sign over power of attorney. Once he gets that, he can sell the house, liquidate assets, and put us wherever he wants. Probably in a nursing facility we never agreed to." A bitter, trembling breath escaped me. "He thinks we're helpless." Richard squeezed my hands. "But we aren't." He reached for the map and unfolded it fully. The tunnel line stretched beneath us. A ghost passage from a time when people dug quietly to survive. "We're getting out," he said firmly. "And once we are, we'll use everything here to make sure Daniel can never hurt us again." A strange calm came over me. Not the fragile calm of denial, but the stronger kind, forged in heartbreak and clarity. I wasn't just a mother now. I wasn't just a wife. I was a woman reclaiming the life someone tried to steal from me. And as I looked at the map, at the secret my husband had carried for nearly 4 decades, I realized something. We weren't trapped. We were preparing. The first thing I felt when we crawled out of the tunnel wasn't relief. It was cold air brushing against my cheeks, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of the forest and the fading sunlight. After hours in the basement, it felt like stepping into another lifetime entirely. My hands trembled as I pushed aside a curtain of roots and ivy, emerging in the overgrown corner of our property where no one but Richard ever bothered to go. My husband climbed out after me, wincing as he stretched his stiff knee. He brushed dirt from his shirt and breathed in deeply. "We made it," he murmured. I nodded, still gripping the tunnel edge for balance. "I never knew we had this." "That was the point," he said with a faint smile. The sky overhead was streaked with pink and gold, a soft sunset that completely contradicted the chaos happening in our home. It struck me how strange life could be, how beauty and betrayal could share the same horizon. We walked slowly toward the house, keeping to the trees. There were no cars in the driveway, Daniel and his wife had left hours ago, believing we were trapped and powerless. They'd probably gone home to plan the next steps: papers, signatures, control. They thought the world already belonged to them. As Richard unlocked the back door with one of the old keys, I felt a tremor of strength stirring in me. Not anger. Not the wild, screaming kind, but something quieter, steadier. A strength born of knowing the truth, of surviving what was meant to destroy us. We went inside. The house felt different. Not violated exactly, but watched like it had witnessed something it didn't know how to understand. My kitchen table was still set from breakfast. The tea kettle was still on the stove. But now I saw everything with new eyes. Our home had become a battlefield. And Daniel had made himself the enemy. Richard set the documents on the table, spreading them out with careful hands. "We go to the lawyer first thing in the morning," he said. "We'll secure everything formally. They won't be able to touch a thing." I touched the edge of the deed with my fingertips. "I never wanted it to come to this," I whispered. He placed his hand over mine. "Neither did I." Night fell quietly, and when the lights inside flickered again, I didn't feel fear this time. So much had changed in just a few hours. I felt older, yes, but also sharper. Like life had sanded away something soft inside me and revealed something steel beneath it. Hours later, the sound of gravel crunching outside broke the silence. Headlights swept across the curtains. My heartbeat quickened, not from dread but from clarity. "They're back," I said. Richard nodded. "Let's finish this." We didn't hide. We didn't run. We sat at the kitchen table like two people who had lived too long to be afraid of children playing at power. Daniel walked in first, keys jingling arrogantly. His wife followed, her heels clacking like war drums. But when they saw us, sitting calmly, unharmed, waiting, their faces drained of color. "Mom," Daniel whispered. How did you get out?" I looked at him for a long moment. The boy he had been flickered in his eyes for just a second, then vanished behind the greed and desperation he had let consume him. "The same way we built this family," I said softly. "Through strength you never imagined we had." His wife stepped forward angrily. "You were supposed to stay downstairs. The documents are staying with us," Richard cut in, his voice steady as stone. "And you two will be leaving this house tonight." Daniel looked between us, helpless now that his illusion of control had shattered. "You can't do that. We already have," I said gently, sliding the deed toward him just enough for him to see our signatures stamped across it in ink older than his marriage. He swallowed hard. I stood slowly, my joints aching but my spirit unshaken. "Daniel," I whispered, "I will always love you. But love does not mean letting you destroy us." His wife tugged at his sleeve, panic rising in her eyes. "We should go." And they did. No shouting. No theatrics. Just silence, the kind that follows a truth too heavy to deny. When the door closed behind them, I leaned against Richard and finally allowed myself to breathe deeply. "We're safe," he murmured. "No," I said softly. "We're stronger." Outside, the night settled around the house like a promise. We had survived betrayal. We had reclaimed what was ours. And we had done it without losing ourselves in the darkness Daniel tried to trap us in. Sometimes revenge isn't cruel. Sometimes it's simply standing tall again where someone expected to find you broken. And sometimes, it's sweeter than anything you ever thought yourself capable of.